about 10 years ago or so, there was a proclaimed or a foreseen shortage in the wastewater industry. And it was true, because a lot of us came into these facilities 30 years ago when the Clean Water Act came into place and built what they call secondary facilities. You had to do biological treatment. And we're all seeing now the end of our careers, it's time to retire. But there were no students coming up to say, hey, I'll take that job, because it really takes about 3 years as an operator to get your certificate, or to get your experience to be certified. And it was a real problem. In fact, one of our district board members, I had to give a board presentation just a few months back because he was really concerned about succession plans and who's going to run the plant. And then one of the things we presented was Bayworks and what they're doing and everything else. So that's really the main gist of it, is why we're here. Steve actually started, before I came 3 years ago, started this concept of an internship program. And unfortunately, well, let's say fortunately, it happened about last year. We finally were able to get one going. Steve did a lot of work on that. So we had about 5 interns come through.
So far, yes.
And 2 of those guys were hired permanent. So Andrew we'll see in here in a little while, but he really did a good job. Products is I got a new vocabulary word. Contextualize. I had no idea what that was. I was saying it wrong all these weeks, and now I use it in every conversation I can. And the other thing, of course, our biggest thing is it's really exciting to us to have, and we really have some genuine interest in some of these young adults to move into the industry and want to learn and be a lot like me when I started. Because my first tour of the wastewater treatment plant, I had no idea. I just thought, you flushed it down that white thing and you didn't have to worry about it anymore. But I always loved the sciences. So when I went and toured the treatment plant for the first time, it was like, wow, chemistry, physics, math, all rolled into one. So it was great. So I'll go to the next one. The script. All right, so one of the things is we got together. Could you go to that first picture that we had with all the groups in there? By any chance? Okay. So the first thing we did is on the upper right-hand side, and that's our group. So we came down and did a workshop, and I got to meet Levi, who you'll hear from a minute. Very, very impressed with the work he's done. Not only having a full-time job, but actually running and educating people in our industry and what we do. Cheryl, whose charm is very persuasive, I have to admit. I think everyone would agree. And also Luis, who actually brought the program or the overall project to us. And we're on the other side with Gabe Snook, who we'll see, he's actually has a video. Steve on the other end, and I'm in the middle. Now Steve came to me and he said he attended the first contextualized learning meeting, and he came back and said, hey, we'd like to do a video here or get into this. And so I talked to him a little bit, and he says, they want you to come along. And it's like, oh, great, I got a lot of things to do. But I sat in there. And one of the things that helped me out a lot, we'll talk about a little bit, is having a clear vision on where we wanted to go, and that was one of the important things. So as we're looking around here, on the upper left-hand side is the day that we shot the video. The reason why we did the earthquake was actually Steve was out doing a number of papers and presentations on the earthquake around CWEA and other organizations. And it was actually Steve and I that were the 2 that responded when the earthquake hit at like 3 in the morning. And we actually toured through the plant. So it makes for sort of a good story. Earthquake hits, heavy load in the plant, we had to do something. We had to use math. For me, it's kind of, at this point of the game, the math is, I could do it in my head, but really the basic of it was in action and the calculations and then had a view on what the effects were throughout the treatment facility. And then in the bottom is a shot in the lab, and Joe did a fantastic job shooting that and putting that, Corey putting that video together. You're very modest. I think ours came out really nice. What else do I want to mention there? The other thing that we wanted to do with all the actors involved is kind of represent the community, because we're thinking about in the schools, there is some diversity, so we wanted to try to appeal in some way to that, and I think the project came together very well. Okay. Script. Okay, so the first thing they said was you got to write a script, and for some reason with me, I can remember those snapshots from that evening. And Star Trek, we mentioned that earlier, so I watched a number of those shows. And then Cub Scouts, we used to write the scripts for my son's den, and we had to put together a skit or a play. So for me, it came real easy. I mean, I could see the scenes that we would see and the shots that we would do to try to minimize lines and to minimize where we had to walk to. And the most important thing I thought to keep the video side running is you had to push it out, push something out there that I could distribute to Steve and Gabe to critique, to take a look at it and say, no, I don't want to say that, doesn't seem right, why don't we try this? And then once we had that final document, we pushed it out to the group. And that was a matter of, what, a couple days that we got it out? And then, of course, we got some input from those that are a little bit more savvy with it. But it really, from the original, it didn't change a real lot. It was a good idea. The next thing that we did is the storyboard. Now, I like the Corey originals. I don't know about anybody else. But those are great, and they're quick. I mean, I think he ripped this off, and I think I sent her the script, and I think it was a matter of minutes when we got back to storyboards. I was like, man, is she on the ball? But it's good, because I like the originality of it and the flow through, and there's enough information, and it was done in a draft form to tell exactly what we want to do. We could follow it completely. It was clear that you could read it. So the storyboard came together very nicely. The call sheet, as Corey spoke of, even just before the call sheet, what we did is Cheryl asked if we could give pictures or locations of where the shots would be. Went on Google Earth. That's a great tool. I have a lot of fun with Google Earth. And we were able to actually show arrows on I think we had like 3 different locations, maybe 4, that the scenes would take place at. And then I just took a snapshot of the area, and I included those in that document. So it was real clear, not even having been at the site, get some familiarity with the site and how it would flow. That enabled the call sheet to be put together to some degree, that all of our staff, which there were, 5 staff members that we had, and then Levi and the people that he brought had to be there for the whole thing. But for my staff members, they knew where they had to be and when it would occur, so they weren't tied up for the whole morning, which I didn't think it was that long, a couple hours, to get things done. So that worked out quite well.
And here we go.
And here we go. Here's the video.
Is this someone going to hit the lights thing?
Hi, my name is Stephen Chavez. I'm a grade 3 operator here at NAPA Sanitation District. Our work is very important to the community and the environment. Here at the district, we have several processes that we use to eliminate pollutants in the water.
And I'm Gabe Snook. I'm also a grade 3 operator here at NAPA Sanitation District. In addition to what Steve said, we produce recycled water for use in irrigation. And we put our biosolids and the energy created into use. I guess you could say we're a resource recovery facility.
Hello, my name is Andrew Jellison. I'm an operator in training working here at the district, gaining qualified work experience to become a wastewater operator.
Hi, I'm Cindy Tran. I'm a newly hired Operator 1 who just completed an internship and a community college program for water and wastewater operators.
Hi, my name is Levi Fuller. I've had the pleasure of working for 2 different agencies during my 26-year career as a wastewater treatment plant operator.
We use math on a regular basis here at the wastewater plant to control our processes and to also know if we need any changes to be made in any process.
And we're also going to show you how we use math to help us through the earthquake back in August of 2014. They're saying it was a 6.1 earthquake centered on the other side of the river. No, there's no damage and the plant's running well.
Hey, everything looks good. We just checked out the digester and the aeration basin area. There's not a whole lot of damage. Right now we're going to go check the influent pump station.
Okay, thanks.
Man, I'm really surprised the plant held up.
Yeah, the earthquake centered just about a mile from here, just over the river. You ever see the seismic engineering that goes into that? There's a lot of math calculations.
Yeah, it's almost as much math as I had to do to get certified. Hey, do you smell wine?
Hey fellas, come take a look at this.
Wow, the flow is purple.
Yeah, it looks like straight wine. It even smells like wine.
Man, I've never seen wastewater like that before. The organic load in that water's got to be high.
Yeah, that's going to knock the plant out. Hey, see if you can get a hold of a panel to come out and take a sample of this.
Head works influent pH low. In alarm. Head works influent pH low. In alarm.
Hey, the influent picture is in alarm, and it's dropping.
Yo. Wine? Makes sense. pH is dropping. I'll notify the lab. ¿Puedes tomar una muestra del influente, por favor?
Sí, señor.
Hey, I heard the alarm going off. What's going on?
It was a pH alarm. It appears there's wine in the influent. Why don't you go grab a sample and I'll finish cleaning this up.
Okay.
Maybe we should divert the flow to the pond.
I think first of all, we need to do some of them math calculations we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, we'll have to calculate the organic loading so we'll know how to adjust the treatment process.
I have found that being a wastewater plant operator to be very rewarding. The job benefits, the security of the job are just excellent. And also as being a steward of the environment has been very rewarding also.
If you'd like to hear more about how we prepared ourselves for our job, visit the Baywork website to hear our personal stories. 2 of us did ours in English and Spanish. The career section of the Baywork website is very helpful in preparing you for the jobs in the water industry.
So it's funny, so I wrote the script and I had all the characters, take a look at it and give me their feedback. So I was really surprised that I was accused of being sexist by by the lab tech, the woman lab technician. She didn't really say it that way, but she felt bad that I wrote in there that she would be cleaning up the mess from the earthquake. So I was like, okay, well, what do you want to do? So I see how they did it in the video, right? She handed it off to Rodrigo, the guy. That was good. But anyways, the candidate development interviews, so each one talks about themselves. And what was really interesting about it, especially from the guys from NAPA, is they're genuinely interested in what they do, and that comes out in their video, and generally interested in getting others and sharing their information or their knowledge with them to bring them into the industry. And Andrew Jellison, he achieved his goal that he had mentioned. He just got hired by the city of Pinole as a wastewater operator, permanent job. And like was mentioned earlier, it's nice where that comma lands for your first job. It's real nice where that lands, because they're usually about 5 figures. Where does he start? 50, 60,000, something like that, with a real nice benefit package. To come out of school into that role is pretty good. So.
Yeah, you spent a year with us, being an intern.
So with that, actually the greater half was Levi, and I'll introduce him now. A couple problems that we saw putting the video together, like I said, was getting it. We moved pretty quick from what I understand, but it was that script writing that I think we were able to do that. It just coming to someone in the organization. So those that are going to do a video, that'd be great to keep the ball rolling really quick. Is to have somebody on your group that understands, can write a story together, and like Corey had mentioned before when we were talking, just push it out there and don't be so sensitive about it, because it's going to be torn apart and reconfigured, but it's the way to move the project. The other one is we got down to the math section. I think it was Renee that you were talking about how the math problems would fit in. So for our industry, there's probably a finite set of equations that we use. So as we get down the road in our industry, it may be difficult to find more challenging to find a scenario that might fit a math problem. So other than that, it was really good.
That hasn't been done before.
That hasn't been done before, yeah. Because we had about maybe 6 different things that would apply, but we pared that down to 4. As Levi will tell us. So Levi, come on up, it's your turn. Thank you.
Okay, let's see, as the PowerPoint says, I'm Levi Fuller. I'm the Chief Plant Operator with Dublin San Ramon Services District. I've been in the wastewater industry for about 26 years now. And why I wanted to participate? Well, after 26 years in the wastewater industry, I'm at a point in my career where I'm probably going to retire in the next 4 to 5 years. And although I love working at wastewater treatment plants, when I think about my legacy, I don't want it to be like, the Levi Fuller primary clarifier at a sewage treatment plant. And so I started teaching, as you mentioned earlier, in the Bakwi program, which is a program that takes community college curriculum, and we teach the classes at various utilities around the Bay Area to teach folks to train the knowledge gap that we have for folks coming into the industry. Then I got out of the Navy and I said, what am I gonna do now? And I ended up stumbling across the water and wastewater industry, and it's provided a good living for myself and my family. And so now that I look at kind of walking off into the sunset in about 4 or 5 years, now I'm really passionate about training the next generation of water and wastewater operators. So this was the warm-up products for students, and basically what it does is it takes a couple of things like detention time, where you need to be able to calculate the volume of a tank and how much water flows into that tank. And in order to determine the amount of detention time in a tank, well, why is that important? It's important because basically wastewater treatment plants operate using microorganisms. And the microorganisms use the contamination in the wastewater as a food source. And they need a certain amount of time in order to do that. And so if you can explain to kids when their teacher is teaching them how to calculate the volume of the tank in order to be able to determine detention time, and then have a real world example about how they might be able to use that in a job. So that's what this exercise is designed to do. It's a warm-up exercise to take some basic high school math, determining the volume of a tank, and then showing in a real world application how that might be used. Okay, next. Then we have this cover sheet for teachers, and as was mentioned earlier, this is designed so that the teacher kind of understands the basic math that students need to understand in order for them to be able to use this product in the classroom. And it has the California codes there for the different types of algebra that the teacher needs to be sure that the students are familiar with. And this also has some context because one of the things that Jim and some of the other Bakwi instructors, when we started teaching these community college classes about 7 years ago, one of the things that we noticed is that in teaching a lot of the wastewater classes, we had to spend a disproportionate amount of time going back and covering basic high school algebra, geometry, and things like that in order to get the students to be able to understand the concepts that we were trying to teach in the class. And what we ended up doing is we actually developed a math assessment test, because we had everybody from high school students who may or may not have gotten a good high school background in math, to people who have been out of high school for 20 years and hadn't done any math in 20 years and were trying to make a career change. So we developed this math assessment test so we could assess the math skills of the folks who wanted to come into the program. If they passed the math assessment test, then they could immediately start taking classes. If they failed that math assessment test, then we had a math refresher course where they could spend 1 semester going over basic high school algebra and things like that, so they were ready to take the wastewater classes. So that's what that cover sheet covers there. And then this is a equivalence formula sheet. This is a sheet that's commonly used in the wastewater industry. It's used actually on certification exams and things like this, that covers the basic formulas that wastewater operators need to pass certification exams and some of the math behind operations of a water or wastewater facility. Worksheet for students. So this is a worksheet that we developed, and there are other pages here. These are kind of the front pages of these documents. And this one covers a concept in wastewater called food to microorganism. So if you think of the contamination in the wastewater as food, and the microorganisms have to consume that food in order to clean up the wastewater. And so this is taking the real world example that all wastewater treatment plants have to deal with which is contamination coming into the wastewater treatment plant, and then converting that concentration into pounds, and then having a sufficient amount of pounds in the wastewater treatment plant to remove that contamination. And then we went on and we used the example of the 360 gallons of wine that came into the NAPA, 360,000, I'm sorry, gallons of wine coming into the wastewater treatment plant, and how that impacted the, yeah, they have 360 gallons all the time.
We needed that.
So that's no big deal. And so what happens when you do that calculation of the 360,000 gallons of wine, what you end up finding is that the volume of that flow doesn't really change the detention time that much. There's not many changes in terms of the treatment process that the folks at NAPA had to do in order to deal with this additional 360,000 gallons of wine. However, 360,000 gallons of wine has a concentration of BOD, and that is just a way, that's just an acronym that translates the amount of food that is in wastewater treatment plants that these microorganisms have to remove. And so the organic loading on the treatment plant about doubled. So it would be like, if you looked at it in human terms, it would, if you could eat, one hamburger and an order of fries and a Coke, and that was fine, and someone said, hey, here's 2 hamburgers and 2 orders of fries and 2 Cokes, that depending on your size, that might be a lot to deal with. Mm-hmm. And so it was taking, again, this basic high school math and just a common concept that everybody can understand. You use microorganisms. The microorganisms use the contamination in the wastewater as food. Here's what it's like on a normal day, and then here's what happens when you have an earthquake that causes 360,000 gallons of wine to be spilled into the treatment plant, and how the folks at NAPA had to make changes to their treatment process in order to deal with that. And then here's the solution sheet for teachers that takes all of that math and basically has the answers to it. And then we have this exit ticket, and it basically just 5 kind of basic questions about, what did you learn about wastewater treatment plants? What did you learn about organic loading? How do you think the 360,000 gallons of wine impacted the treatment process, and so on and so forth. And so I mentioned, there were kind of 2 things that were coincidental about today. One is Andrew got a job at my old plant, the city of Pinole. The other thing is I'm sitting here now with Jim and Steve and my son. I work at Dublin San Ramon Services District, but I live in American Canyon, which is in Napa County. And I talked about how nobody ever took me to the local wastewater treatment plant. My son's high school class today is doing a tour of the Napa plant.
Oh, no.
So.
Thank you.